Hi everyone. I'm Sonia Pritchard, CAO for the County of Dufferin and Director on the OMA board. Our last session of the day is about life and career options after retirement, something that, based on the stats we heard from Thomas earlier today, are probably pretty interesting to a lot of people in the room. So retirement from a CAO role doesn't mean the end of meaningful work, leadership, or purpose. In fact, for many, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one that looks different for each leader, but remains rooted in service and contribution. This session offers a candid look at the diverse paths senior municipal leaders have taken after stepping away from full-time service. We're fortunate to hear from three highly respected voices who have each recently navigated this transition. Dawn Shropshire served as CAO in Chatham-Kent from 2012 to 2022, known for leading during major crises, and was later appointed interim CAO in Elgin County. Bob Casselman is a veteran municipal administrator with 38 years of service, most recently as CAO of Brighton and Brockville. And Janice Baker held the role of city manager in Mississauga for 15 years and was later CAO for Peel Region and is recognized for transformative leadership and public service excellence. Please join me in welcoming our panelists.
Actually, yeah, thanks very much. Janice, right here. You made it back to the trip.
I did. Like we're all on time.
Feeling very
Well
good about that.
Absolutely.
You want to take an order?
Yes, we're behind here. So you want me to go there? There is great.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us today. So it's my pleasure to be able to ask this esteemed group some questions, but we'll be sure to make some time for you to ask questions at the end. So as we get started, looking back, what were the most important factors you considered when preparing for retirement? And what do you wish you had thought about sooner? Janice, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that. I always knew I would retire on the day I got my 85 factor, and I could calculate that to the month. When Hazel retired in 2014, and Bonnie Crombie came in as mayor, Bonnie asked me to stay on, which was kind of nice. And so we had a good discussion, and I explained to her that I had already picked my retirement date at that point, which was 5 years hence. So I said, Bonnie, I'll get you through your first term, and then I'll give you a year to find someone to get you through your next term, and then I will move on. So it was pretty well planned from my perspective. I mean, these jobs are hard, and I don't think there's a person in this room that doesn't on any given day recognize you can only do them for so long before they take a toll, either on your health or your mental well-being or your relationships or whatever. And I always thought, you know, in these jobs, no 2 days are the same, but every year repeats, right? Budget, 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 and then more budget. And, you know, the annual rhythm of every organization is more or less the same. So I really had thought about it a lot, and I haven't regretted anything. Now, you know, the downside is the date that I picked to retire was May of 2020. Yes, indeed. I heard an O in the room, where the world had shut down. So most of the things that I had planned to do at that point couldn't happen. Travel couldn't happen. You know, even going to our place in Florida wasn't happening. And so that's how I ended up at Peel Region. That's a long story and I don't need to tell it, but which was great because you know, it was not my plan A, but it actually worked out quite well. Peel was great. It was a really challenging time because they were on the front lines of COVID, but it really got me, you know, through a period which I think would have looked quite different had I not done that. And at the same time, it was, you know, I mean, they say a change is as good as a rest, and working with Peel was kind of like that. But in terms of what we considered, I mean, where do you want to live? You know, where did we want to spend winters? Not in Canada. You know, financial, my husband and I had planned it all out, and I think that served us really well. Life will happen and things will change, but you know, it's not something that you should think about the week before you're kind of ready to pull the trigger. You know, I had a life plan, and certainly retirement was part of it, and it's happened. Done.
Thanks. Amazing coincidence with the OMERS factor, because when I was thinking about retirement, certainly one of the things I wanted to do is not to get dinged. I spent 25 years away from municipal government between sort of when I entered in early in my career and then coming back in. And if you get that clawback of 5% per year, that's nasty. So anyway, I knew I had a certain date when I was going to reach the magic factor would have been when I was 65. Some of the unknown things that, like Janice, I was planning on retiring in 2020 or 2021 at the latest. And I started a process to actually have my successor come in and provide that. And it went off the rails. Our recruitment process had a real unexpected turn of events, and it was something that was very unfortunate. On top of that, we had COVID. And some of you were in the room this morning when you heard about the Wheatley disaster and so on. So there's all this stuff that was coming up, and it was like, do you really want to hand over when you did? So all that's to say is that although I had a certain timing in place, a number of things sort of switched that around. And then about a year into COVID, the other thing that happened is I had a health scare. And all of a sudden I'm sitting around kind of going, oh my God, things are starting to fall apart. How fast do you get the hell out so you can actually enjoy some retirement, right? So I guess my advice would be for people to take a look at it. Like Janice said, plan ahead. Most of us are going to be so fortunate in terms of the financial piece, like we've got good jobs and, you know, with OMERS pensions and so on, that's not going to be a big factor for many. But being understanding that there could be some unexpected consequences around your retirement, and then planning for that. As it turned out, I got to the point where I actually invited Tony Haddad to come in and be an interim CEO. Well, I sort of continue to watch over the Wheatley advance. And anyway, everything worked out, but it was a bit of a twist and a turn near the end. And I'm quite happy the way it worked out. And I'm quite happy that I'm working on a semi-retirement basis, and everything's been really good in that respect. So more about that later.
Thanks, Don. Similar to my counterparts here, I certainly looked at a number of different factors before I decided to retire. First and foremost, I looked at whether I was financially ready. And as we all know, we have the OMERS pension and CBP old age pension. So certainly from a financial perspective, I was in pretty good shape and didn't really concern myself with it too much. Second factor, and just as important as the first, was home front readiness. Was my wife or partner ready for me to be home on a 24/7 basis? So, because the dynamic in the household could change pretty quickly. And the second thing I looked at was along the home front perspective is what major renovations did I need to tackle before I retired? Do I need to put a new roof in the house? Do I need to put a furnace in the basement? I turned my mind to those because obviously from a financial perspective, those things can be done far easier before you retire. So I certainly turned my mind to that. The third thing I considered was my physical health. Was I ready? Was I prepared? And that's one of the things that I should have done a lot sooner, because in this business, we are a very giving individual, always taking care of others' needs. and to the detriment of our own, quite frankly, from my perspective. Another thing I looked at was life's yardstick. And I looked at my family lineage and had a grandfather, a father, an aunt, an uncle, all passed away at the age of 70. And that concerned me. And when I became 65, I started to do the math and I said, geez, I want to get on and live my life, travel around the world, do this, do that, do everything. And I don't have a lot of time. I'm not my grandfather, my father, my aunt, my uncle. I'm my own person trying to take care of this old body as best I can and live well beyond the 70th year. The other thing that I gave consideration to, and as I retired, I thought about getting involved in an ABC company and doing part-time gigs for other municipalities, filling in for CAOs who had lost their jobs. And I decided against it. And one of the reasons I made that decision was because of some of the people that had previously been in this room, good friends of mine that passed away way too early. And I'll name a few. Some of the crowd may know some of these people, but the first one was Gerard Hunt from Kingston, passed away way too early. Second one was Mario Belvedere. That's a name from the past. From Milton, great guy. Steve Silver recently, Mr. Callery recently, young man with a number of different children. That really hit me and made me decide to get out of the business and get on with the second page of my life.
Thanks, Bob. So next question, what resources, professional, personal, or community, did you find most helpful as you transitioned into retirement?
I mean, retirement's a very personal decision, but I think building the infrastructure for retirement is probably the way that I would talk about it, just as we build the infrastructure for communities. So, you know, looking at your financial situation, for a lot of us, and for me in particular, I mean, that was never going to be a barrier. You know, OMERS is a very generous pension plan. There's no question about it. And so for those of us who were fortunate enough to get into municipal government in Ontario and then have a long career in it, you know, you're going to be okay financially, quite frankly. So that was never going to be an issue. Insurance, we had to look at. I mean, Bob's point, and you must have been looking at my notes, because so much of what he said, and I think we all think the same way. You know, one of the things you have to look at, and of course you hear the conversation now when it comes to, it's not about lifespan, it's about health span. How long can you do the things that you want to do? You know, and how long will your health allow you to do that? When you get to a certain age, things start to fall apart. I can tell you that. I mean, you're only going to be healthy and robust for so long. I just got back from a Mediterranean cruise, and it was surprising to me, like the number of people on that cruise that had to be accommodated, that had mobility challenges, and many of them were younger than I was. So, I mean, these are all the things you have to think about. So health and health insurance is really important. I am going to put a plug in for Maru because I did all the homework, and their plan was the most affordable and the most comprehensive. And of course, you can, if you're retiring from a municipality, you're automatically eligible. You do not have to jump through any hoops or get any tests or pass any barriers. You're just in, just by virtue of your career in municipal government. So I would recommend that to anyone. And OMERS is very, very helpful as well. But I think you look at the experience of others, and I had made a note on in respect of what Bob just mentioned. When you get to be our age, unfortunately, you lose people who are your friends and your age. I could add a couple of other folks to the list that Bob mentioned. And when you see that and you watch that, be mindful of it, because, there are no guarantees in life. There are no guarantees in health. And so put that infrastructure in place and make sure that you're prepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly, because you don't know when any of those are going to happen.
I'll just echo the part about your body falling apart. And it happens so fast. It's just unbelievable. Being active and really healthy, and all of a sudden you kind of go, oh my God, I got to get a knee replacement, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'm going to take a bit of a different path, but I think you covered that really well. When I was thinking about some things to put into place, I always knew that I wanted to do some things after I retired from full-time work. What I really wanted is more freedom of choice with how I'd invest my time. I didn't want to have the 55 or whatever number of hours per week that was required, so I wanted to have that freedom to choose. Some of the things I didn't think about is I've had administrative support for so long. I haven't had to do any of that stuff. When you're setting up those conference calls with all the different things, I'm thinking, I haven't had to set up a call for years, right? So there's all this sort of stuff that, you're setting up CRA accounts and you're doing all of the different things that would require by the government so that you can actually maintain a business. Some of those things I wish I'd done a little bit more of a head start. It wasn't a big deal, but there's a lot of stuff that you do that probably in your day-to-day role as a CAO, that's no longer a requirement. And strangely, my executive assistant no longer comes over to my house and does all my filing or any of that sort of good stuff. All that sort of stuff you just have to relearn. Not tough, but takes some time. I think the other piece is I got some really good advice about trying to take some time to hit the reset button. When you're so busy, and everybody in this room, I'm sure, has a really full schedule, just taking the time to say, let's pause, and it was recommended to be at least 6 months, and take the time to actually figure out how you want to invest whatever time you've got left. And whether that's working on boards or volunteer work or being a grandparent, whatever that is, that was really good advice. And I spent some time thinking about it. I still was doing volunteer work for some charities and stuff, but that was a continuity thing from what I was done. But taking that time to really pause and say, what's going to give me fulfillment in your life? I was thinking this morning when our keynote speaker was talking about sort of life with purpose and what's going to bring you joy and so on. I went through the same sort of process when I was thinking about retirement. So anyway, I spent some time doing that. I think getting that set in your own mind is going to be something that's going to make you very happy and feel fulfilled through your retirement, like it probably does for your career.
Thanks, Don. Going third here, I'm going to echo some of the comments that my predecessors have already made with respect to Maru and also this association and quite frankly, the mentorship program that they offer. I've been involved in that over the course of the last year or so and have found myself to be one other way to be connected or stay connected with the association and what's happening in the municipal field. I also looked at a number of different professions to assist me in understanding what retirement was going to be all about and how it was going to impact my life. Certainly looked at financial advisors for investments and pensions, looked at an accountant because of income taxes that you pay or don't pay, and assisting with property management only because I had two different places and I was renting one out and needed some assistance in that regard. And the other professional that I looked at was a place called Kingston Orthopedic Pain Institute. And I'll get into that in a few more minutes, but they've certainly changed my life over the course of the last year and made my retirement a lot more fulfilling than what I was looking at about a year ago or so. From a community perspective, there are a number of different organizations that can assist you in acclimatizing yourself to the new reality of retirement. Certainly, we have an active community down in Brockville. We've got an over 55 club. We've got an active Legion. I belong to the local golf club and have resurrected an old high school skill of mine shooting pool. Many of us used to spend a few hours, maybe each and every day, skipping a few classes along the way and picking up some billiard skills. So I've reacquainted myself with those. Those are some of the things that have helped me in the transition.
Let you go first this time.
Sure.
So Rich, and I think maybe this is where you're going to tell us what you alluded to here before. Retirement often comes with surprises. What were the most unexpected joys and the toughest challenges you faced in your first few years?
Joys, stress-free life, where we all are up here from a stress perspective, and now we're down here, which is great. Second item is subject to your partner's override. You get to schedule your life and plan out what you want to do from a day-to-day basis. Other joys, I very much enjoy gardening and spend a lot of time in the backyard gardening. And the other thing that has been a joy for me is somewhere along the line, I don't know where, I picked up a skill of painting, whether it's landscapes or birds or Christmas trees or whatever it happens to be. Very much enjoy it and not half bad at it. Some of the challenges along the way, mostly health related. I retired about 18 months ago or so. 1 month after retiring, I hurt my back and was on a walker for about 6 weeks or so. And finally I get into the Kingston Orthopedic Pain Institute and are receiving shots in my back every 3 months. Changed my life. So I've gone from being on a walker to out on the golf course in about 3 or 4 months. From my perspective, my life is back to semi-normal and getting on with retirement plans. The second challenge was also health related. My partner of 44 years was diagnosed with cancer. So we had great plans to go traveling and do this and that with respect to retirement. And in an instant, your life changes. We went through surgery, went through radiation, and all of a sudden a year slips by where you're not doing anything. You're just focusing on your partner. And that's where you should spend your time, with your partner in their time of need. So that was certainly one of the challenges. In so doing, all the plans we had to travel got delayed. So certainly that was a challenge. That was something that we missed out at. Obviously, when you're no longer the boss, you lose that bit of identity with respect to being at work. And certainly we all know that at home we're not the boss. We're probably third in line, coming after the dog and the cat and the bird. And what I've also found out, one of the challenging things is that when you decide to leave, municipalities move on. And all of a sudden, you're Bob who? And they're moving on, and you have to get on with your life also. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had over the course of the last year and a half or so, quite frankly, is my golf game. It's terrible, and 18 months hasn't improved it one iota.
So challenges, add some health stuff as well, right? So that's just sort of taking care of business. But I actually didn't feel like there was gigantic challenges. I felt really fortunate. I was given that advice to take 6 months off. Robin and I had a chance to do a lot of traveling. We went to 3 continents in less than a year. We had a lot of fun, spent more time with grandchildren and family and friends, and it was really, really nice. But when I actually got a call sort of after I've been off for about 8 months to whether I wanted to come back into an interim gig as a CAO for Elgin County, I felt really good about it, and I loved doing it. I was amazed at how much I actually enjoyed going back to work. The trade-off was giving up what I had as a tremendous amount of free time and choosing how I wanted to allocate my time each and every day, to going back to that world where you've got council meetings and commitments and a schedule and some of those sort of things. And it was really just sort of balancing that. But I have to say, I loved it. I also love knowing that I had a set date, that my job was to try and recruit a CAO to come in and help them do a transition plan. There was a couple of immediate things like supporting staff and so on. Few surprises there that were positive, but at the end of the day, that was sort of the trade-off, is sort of moving into that new transition as to how you were going to spend your time. And I'm still finding it's not just sort of one transition. Like after the transition with doing the interim CAO, now I'm doing some contract work. So that's been interesting. But I'm doing, my wife will tell you, my wife's in the audience. She's a CAO as well. So I don't think I'm going to die of a heart attack from the amount of work I'm doing right now. I think I've got about 20 hours a month, something like that, which is, I got to tell you, it's really good. Like that's a really good amount of time. So how do you manage your time? How are you going to invest it? And just sort of taking a periodic look as to how the best investment is going to make you happy and also feel like you're having joy in your life. And I found a lot of that joy with volunteering, as well as spending more time with family and friends, in addition to doing some occasional work.
Yeah, I really don't have a lot to add to that. I mean, as I said to you earlier, I retired in May of 2020. So the old joke, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And, you know, the guys have covered it really, really well. So COVID for me was, you know, oh, you're going to do what? And none of which could happen.
So how do you continue to find meaning and purpose in retirement years? What activities or pursuits keep you engaged and fulfilled?
So I'm working about 20 hours a month. You probably all heard my spiel at various times. It's like a commercial. Thank you very much for the time. Doing some work with EPCOR. I've also been doing a lot of mentorship. I've got, I went to University of Ottawa for my MBA, and I'm doing regular mentorship programs. As every month I get a new mentee and we have a chance to talk. Still stayed in touch with a number of people that I used to work with, and still doing some work with that group. I've been a Rotarian for 15 years or so. So I'm doing a lot of work with Rotary. We've got some really fun stuff. I'm on the board with that. So volunteer activities is really important to me. Probably the biggest fulfillment thing is family and friends. We've got 2 young grandchildren, and being able to spend time with them, or supporting parents that might need some additional time. Those things are the things that really give me joy. One thing that I also loved is I'm actually reading just for myself. Like I used to love to read, but you know how much reading is on your desk every day? My pleasure reading, or reading for interest, other than the council reports and some of that sort of stuff, was negligible before retirement. Now I'm back reading on a regular basis, and that's been a joy as well.
Thanks, Don. A number of different things that keep me engaged and fulfilled, and I've talked about a few of them. We've chatted a little bit about painting and my new skill set in that regard. Love golfing, gardening. Going to soon get on with the travel business and the travel bug now that my wife is feeling well. Like to shoot pool. I have a new pursuit that's about to begin. I'm going to learn how to play the banjo. So maybe if I'm invited back next year, I'll give you a twang or two. Love to hunt and fish, going hunting in another couple of weeks. And my biggest joy and fulfillment is trying to get this old body in shape. And, you know, I had a friend tell me a couple of weeks ago that round is a shape also.
Yeah, perfect shape. Pickleball is the other thing. If you're going to retire, you got to get ready for pickleball. I think that's the...
My God, pickleball is so noisy. You know what? I don't feel the pressure to be anything at the moment. Like I've really looked at this is my time. I gave 40 years to a career and 35 of those to municipal government. So screw you. Like this is for me now. Go to hell. I was doing some board work. I got kicked off the MPAC board because of my LinkedIn posts. True story, but I'm not going to tell it right now. I do stay connected to a small circle of my friends and colleagues that I had through, through my career, the ones who mean a lot to me. Everybody else I've shed. I do some board work, but I'm not actively seeking more, travel. By the way, get a library card. If you want, like, I'm like Dawn, I have read over 200 books in the last 3 years, and the vast majority of them I came from the library. I want to try new things. Pottery is on my list. But realistically, no, like this is me, this is for me now. And I'm very selective. Very selective. I have learned that there's a word in the English language that works really well when people phone you, and it's no. So I'm doing well. Thank you.
Amazing. So now maybe a little bit of advice for the people in the room. So today's CAOs face intense pressures and shifting political landscapes. What advice would you like to share with those of us still in the role or those considering taking on the role?
There are easier ways to make a living. It is rewarding. I mean, I think I look back on my career, and I'm sure my colleagues would say the same. Some of the things that you had the opportunity to do, some of the people that you had the opportunity to meet, some of the folks that you had the opportunity to work with and lead, are highlights and would be highlights of almost anyone's career. But the work is hard and the work environment isn't always great. Politicians make lousy bosses, and please don't ever think that they're your friends. They may be friendly, but they're not your friends. They'll turn on you in a moment if the circumstances mean that they need a scapegoat or somebody's ass to kick. So likely you will be overworked, highly stressed, underpaid, and on call for 24/7. Is there a theme here? Yes. But there are ways you can manage that. So I will share with you some of the ways that I tried to manage them when I was in the hot water. First of all, really set boundaries. Every January, when I was a CAO, before my assistant started plugging things into my calendar, such as budget meetings and council meetings and whatever other meetings, were going to be recurring in the rhythm of the organization, I would schedule my vacation time in my calendar so that those top blocks of time were on hold. And she knew that you don't change that, without discussion with me. Talk to the mayor. When Bonnie became the mayor in Mississauga after Hazel left, I had a conversation with her about what she could expect from me during the week and what she could expect from me on the weekend. I said, Bonnie, from Monday to Friday, unless I'm asleep, if you text me or email me, I will get back to you pretty much right away. On the weekends, maybe not so much. I might be golfing, I might be in my garden. Have those conversations. Like, you really do have to try and set some of those boundaries. If you're changing jobs, negotiate hard on the way in, especially now with this strong mayor environment. I can't even imagine it. I'm glad I'm not in the sector right now. Your motto should be protect yourself. And I admire each and every one of you that are still in the trenches doing the jobs that need to be done in each and every one of the communities that you serve. But remember, you also need to serve yourself.
That's great advice. I'll take a couple of different tacks. I have to say, when I was in the CAO role, I rarely felt like a lot of pressure. And I'm not sure if that's a function of me being really bloody lucky or obtuse and missing all the stuff that was around me. I really don't know. The work I did before used to be disaster management. So I was involved with the tsunami response and 9/11 response and earthquakes and tornadoes and stuff. I never saw anything come to a council meeting that was really scary. Nobody was losing their life. You know, most of the time they weren't losing their home. You heard about it sometimes this morning. So to me, it's a matter of perspective. The thing I enjoyed the most and the thing that I hope brings you joy as well is working to build a community that's going to be better and stronger and healthier. And I mean, that's where I got my joy. And that's something for the most part, I was lucky enough to have politicians and colleagues and staff that like to do the same thing. So that was the nice thing. Just to add to Janice's comments, when you're looking at trying to think about retirement, one of the things I liked most was the investing in the future leaders that were going to be interested in the job. Rob Browning was here. I can't see Rob in the audience today, but anyway, Rob hired me as a general manager in Chatham-Kent several years ago. And when Rob left, they went through an interim period, and then anyway, I remember our HR person coming into the room and saying, "So who wants to be the next CEO?" People were looking at their shoes and they're looking out the window. Nobody would even make eye contact because nobody wanted the job. And I thought to myself, good God, right? That's terrible. So one of the things I wanted to do was to make sure that when I retired, there'd be a number of people from within the organization that would be interested in the position. And that's meant you had to make the job look like it was fun and not too hard. Because if I was going to walk around sort of dragging my tail and not feeling like it was a fun job, who the hell is going to want it, right? So I think enjoy the time, make sure that your staff know you're enjoying it, celebrate each other, and hopefully when it gets to a time when they're going to be thinking about the job, they're going to kind of go, you know what, I think I can do that. I think that'll be all right. And then you're happy to pass the baton over to them. So.
I'm going to echo Janice's comment with respect to protecting yourself and taking a look at your employment contract and getting some good legal advice in that regard and going in strong and consistent on the way into your municipality. So excellent advice, Janice. That's great. A couple other points I'd like to make is we all deal with stress on a daily basis, and certainly when you're in the role, it's every day. And you've got to find an outlet for that stress, and you've got to make sure that those outlets do not include your family. That's very important because it's far too easy to take it home and lambaste your partner on an ongoing basis or lament about your day. And so find those outlets. The second thing is fight for the balance between life and work. We often are very giving people and we spend 55 hours, 60 hours, weekends, whatever else, and you lose on the home front. So you've got to constantly fight for that balance. The third thing is just some advice from me, and this has boded well for my career, is be a good listener. Whether that's with employees or whether that's with ratepayers. Often they just want to be heard. And that has helped me in my career over the course of the last 30-some years. The next item is common sense will take you far. And when you have an issue that's presented to you, consider the various options that you have, talk to the people that's involved with the issue, and make a decision based upon your best common sense. And most of the time you'll be right in that regard. The last piece of advice that I'll give to you is be passionate with respect to the job that you're doing. Where do you want to make a difference, whether it's in the association or whether it's in your community or whether it's within the municipal perspective, whether you're mentoring a person or not, make a difference, be passionate. So that's the advice that certainly I provide.
Well, we have a bit of time if there's anyone in the audience who has any questions for either Janice, Dawn, or Bob, or all three. So anybody, any questions? Mark.
I did. So Robin's the CAO as well, and she's still working, and she has plans to continue to work for the foreseeable future. So my deal right now is she chooses where we're going to live, and then if I want to take more vacations or go to Ottawa to visit our grandchildren, or whatever, that's on me as well. So if I was given my druthers, I'd love to be closer to the grandchildren. That'd be my wish, but I don't think that's going to happen in the immediate future. That's sort of the trade-off, though. I love not having to shovel snow in southwestern Ontario. That's pretty nice.
Actually, that was a really big consideration for me. I grew up in Newfoundland, so by the time I was 35, I had 70 years of winter under my belt. And so now I figured to balance it, I needed that 70 years of summer, right? So we had, I always believed it was important to live in the community that you worked in. I know there's a lot of debate about that, but that was my personal belief. So when I worked in St. John's, I lived in St. John's. When I worked in Oshawa, I lived in Oshawa. When I worked in Mississauga, I lived in Mississauga. However, when I became the CAO of Mississauga in 2005, the first thing my husband and I did was bought a cottage because I knew I was going to need a place where I could go, occasionally. And we didn't look north because why would you if you're from Newfoundland? I looked south and we bought a place in Wellandport in Niagara and loved it. And so I think now, long story about why that cottage was never going to become a house. It was 150 years old, blah, 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 blah. But we knew from a location perspective, it was important to us to be in, as far south in Canada as you could get, which for us was Fort Erie. Where's Chris? I don't know if he's here or not, but, so, those were the kinds of considerations, but quite literally for us, it was weather, climate, gardening, golf, all of the things that were important to us. And we knew that we wanted to live somewhere where we could do all of those things. And then we do have a place in Florida. We bought in 2010, actually, when the real estate market collapsed because everything was half price. Best decision we ever made. And, once I finished up in Peel, we've now had 2 snowbird winters under our belt where we've gone to Florida and, we left someone else here to clear the driveway and, money is a lot better than snow.
My wife and I grew up along the St. Lawrence River. Our dream since we were first married some 40 some years ago was to retire along the St. Lawrence River and have a house overlooking the river. And that's where we are.
Okay, anybody else? Questions? Oh, yeah, Malcolm.
So I'll go first, Malcolm. I was fortunate enough during my last tenure in Brighton, where I had an opportunity over the last 6 months or so, even though I was full-time in Brighton, I was working remotely 4 out of the 5 days from Brockville. So I had an opportunity to transition in that regard. So that was just happenstance more than anything else. So I took that time to gear up, start thinking about the transition. And that was a natural step for me, living afar from the business and only going in maybe once a week or sometimes once every 2 weeks.
I think part of the transition was knowing when I was going to retire. I was also ready to hand over that mantle of the baton to somebody else. And quite frankly, I was more worried about, because I, like Janice, lived in the community that I was working in, is to give the new CAO the space and without the interference or having my puss showing up at council meetings or whatever, right? Like that's their turn, and they need to have the freedom to sort of put their mark on it. So that wasn't a big transition piece for me. I figured if I was going to provide some leadership, I could do that with volunteering or doing it with other organizations.
Don and Janice, you know this time, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I am naturally an introvert. I know a lot of people might find that hard to believe, but because I talk a lot too. But you know, for me, especially being the leader of a very large organization, I mean, Mississauga had 5,000 employees, so it was, you know, that was a big amorphous group that you knew was there. But I mean, at any given time, there would be hundreds of people working for the city that I had never met in person. So I always looked at my role as a CAO and my visible role as a CAO, being the face of the organization. I mean, we used to do leadership conferences where we would bring all the, you know, 400 or 500 direct level supervisors together. For me, that was like acting because it was not my natural instinct to be in front of a crowd or even to be around a crowd. I mean, ask me to go to a cocktail party, you might as well stick needles in my eyes. So my natural tendency, I am my own best company, if you want to know the truth. And so that was an easy transition for me because the harder part for me, and it was never really hard because I loved the people. I did. I enjoyed that relationship. I enjoyed the relationship with the people who were around me and that I was responsible for. That was different than the relationship with the 12 that were took up a lot more of my time, but gave me a lot less pleasure. And so I enjoyed that, but there's a difference between enjoying it and needing it. I didn't need it. So when my time came, and this would be different, I think, for people, but when my time came to go, I was more than ready because I had had so many years where I was not my own best companion because I was surrounded by a person or a meeting or a council or a, you know, workshop or a team meeting or whatever that could range in size from, you know, 10 to 1,000. Yeah, I was more than ready to be on my own. And my husband and I get along, so I guess that's easy too. But so, you know, as I say, it's different for everyone.
I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has another question. Sure. I mean, I think that's hard to do. I think in a corporate environment or an academic environment, that's built in. In a political environment, I struggle to question whether you would actually have the freedom as a CAO to actually do that. If you walked into the council and said, you know, I'm feeling like I need a break, they would say, yeah, no problem. Here's your severance, right? I mean, they're just not empathetic. They're not wired that way. So, I mean, I will tell you a story. I won't use names, but I had built in Mississauga a very robust succession planning program. It was something that I was extremely proud of. We had invested a lot of time and energy in it, right up to, as John mentioned, CAO level. And I had even gone so far as to have the conversations with council about who was in the pipeline for different positions in the organization, including my own.
And I thought that there was a consensus around that table as to who the successor would likely be. Not my decision, understanding that. But they picked the last person on earth that I would ever have recommended to be my replacement. I was so pissed about it. It was hard for me to see straight for about a week. And that was after a whole bunch of planning, a whole bunch of conversations. Councils are not wired to look at human resources and human resource decisions the way we are and the way we do. They just aren't. And in my case, it was just political meddling. And, you know, again, long story that I don't need to share. But so I don't know, did I ever think about it? I don't know that I ever thought about it, but if I had, I think I probably would have dismissed it as an impractical notion that I would likely not get support from the political masters. Maybe there are others in the room who have a relationship with their council that they would see it differently, but that would be how I would have read it throughout my career in the various councils that I worked with.
So I touched on it earlier. That was that freedom of choice in terms of how you invest your time, be it, you know, an extended travel or spending time with family or the book or whatever it is. That was one of the joys of retirement. That was one of the things I look forward to. And that's one of the things I'm enjoying most now. That's sort of a real privilege. So I did not go into that sort of decision-making process as you were suggesting. I'm trying to remember the first time I took 3 weeks in a row off as the CAO, as opposed to, you know, trying to steal a long weekend or whatever. And I think the longer I served as a CAO, the more I valued that time. I think, you know, to echo Janice's comments, protecting the time for yourself and drawing some boundaries so that you're going to have time to recharge was important.
Yeah, my comments really fall in line with what Janice had to say. The fact that I didn't feel that council was going to be supportive with respect to going in that direction, so I didn't bother even asking.
Thank you all for joining us today. You've certainly given us lots of insights into what it's like to be retired, some of the things we can look forward to, some of the things that maybe we can't. Hopefully the bodies hold up. This was the message I took away. And I think some good advice for those of us still in the role. So namely, protecting that time for yourself and making sure that you're really valuing that work-life balance that we all talk about and that we all make sure, I think, that our employees are obtaining, but we probably ignore for ourselves. So again, thank you to all of you.